Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you. It was the kind of day that began with quiet joy. The sort of morning where everything felt like it was falling into place. The Harris family, Ben, Rachel, their 2 children, and their golden retriever Cooper, were packed tightly into the SUV, bound for a long overdue vacation in the mountains. The air buzzed with excitement. Cooper, tail wagging, sat nestled between the kids, his tongue lolling happily from the side of his mouth, unaware that life was about to shift in a way none of them could have imagined. They had been on the road for 5 hours, winding through pine-lined highways, when the sky began to change. Clouds gathered with silent urgency, and the wind picked up in swirls. Visibility declined, and the once clear road darkened with the coming storm. Still, they pressed on, confident in the car, in their plans, and in the moment. But fate is often cruel in its precision. Just as they rounded a bend, the slick road claimed its victim. A truck, speeding in the opposite lane, lost control. The impact was sudden, violent, and absolute. Metal groaned, tires screeched, and glass shattered in the chaos. The Harris family's SUV was tossed like a toy down a ravine, its passengers thrown into a terrifying spiral of confusion and fear. When the world finally stopped spinning, silence took over. The kind of silence that's only broken by the distant sound of sirens, and the slow realization of what has been lost. Emergency crews arrived swiftly, pulling bodies from twisted steel and debris. The children were found first, shaken, bloodied, but alive. Rachel had a broken arm and bruised ribs. Ben was unconscious, his condition critical but stable, but Cooper was nowhere to be found. The paramedics scoured the crash site, calling his name, hoping for a bark, a whimper, anything. But the dog who had never left his family's side had vanished without a trace. Some believed he had been thrown from the car and succumbed to the wild terrain. Others thought he had run in fear, injured, and disoriented. But no matter how hard they searched, Cooper remained missing. The hospital became a second home for Rachel and the kids in the weeks that followed. Ben underwent surgery after surgery, his recovery slow and uncertain. The children asked about Cooper every day. Rachel tried to stay hopeful, but even her strength was beginning to fray. Flyers were posted, shelters were contacted, social media campaigns were launched, but there was no sign of him. It was as if he had disappeared into the earth. But Cooper had not vanished. Miles away, deeper in the wilderness than anyone had searched, the golden retriever limped along dirt paths and underbrush, his fur matted with blood and pine needles. Disoriented and in pain, he had crawled from the wreckage hours after the crash, his instincts pushing him forward. There was no plan, no sense of direction, just the pull of something deep within him, a loyalty so fierce it transcended logic. Cooper didn't understand what had happened, only that his people were no longer with him, and that he had to find them. Days turned into weeks, and Cooper endured. He scavenged for food, drank from puddles and streams, and slept under the stars. His paws cracked and bled, but he continued. Whenever he came upon a scent trail that reminded him of home, fresh laundry, the scent of gasoline from passing cars, he would follow it, hoping it might lead him back. He approached hikers, only to retreat when they reached out, unfamiliar voices reminding him too much of what he had lost. And still, he walked. Back at home, life had taken on a new rhythm for the Harris family. Ben was released from the hospital and began physical therapy. Rachel did her best to keep the children's spirits up, but the absence of their dog remained a shadow on everything. His empty bed in the corner, his leash still hanging by the door, the silence of a house that used to echo with the sound of his paws on hardwood floors. Hope, like Cooper, was battered, but not broken. And then, one evening, a woman in a town nearly 70 miles from the crash site posted a blurry photo to a local lost and found pet group, a golden retriever, dirty, thin but unmistakably determined. The photo sparked a flurry of comments and shares. Within hours, it had reached Rachel's phone. Her heart pounded as she stared at the screen, tears blurring her vision. It was him. It had to be him. The trail had gone cold once before, but now, after weeks of hopeless searching, the faint glow of possibility was flickering again. Cooper, if he had survived this long, was still trying to get home. Still trying to keep his promise. Not a spoken vow, but a silent one, forged in the bond between the dog and his family. And his journey wasn't over yet. The photo had reignited something powerful, something nearly forgotten beneath layers of grief and resignation. It was a grainy image, taken at dusk, showing a dog crossing a quiet road near the edge of a small farming town. His head was low, his ribs faintly visible beneath matted fur, but there was a look in his eyes that pierced through the blur, a look of purpose, of persistence, of promise. Rachel wasted no time. She contacted the woman who had posted the photo. The witness described a skittish golden retriever who had passed through the outskirts of town over the last few days. Always walking in the same direction, never staying long. He avoided people but returned to the same places: an abandoned barn, a creek that cut through a pasture, the back porch of a local bakery, searching, watching, then moving on. The Harris family coordinated with local volunteers. Flyers were printed again, this time with renewed urgency. Rachel loaded the kids into the car, and Ben, against his doctor's advice, insisted on joining. They drove the 70 miles with heavy hearts and cautious hope, unsure of what they'd find. Cooper had been gone for over a month. He had endured storms, hunger, and injury. There was no guarantee he was still alive, but they had to try. What they didn't know was that Cooper had already sensed something changing in the air. The scent had first reached him the morning before, faint, familiar, and electrifying. A smell from a memory. Shampoo, fabric softener, the trace of a familiar cologne. It triggered something primal. His pace quickened. He left the barn behind and crossed into open fields, past rusted fences and thickets of weeds. For the first time since the crash, Cooper's steps were filled with direction. He wasn't just wandering now. He was following. Meanwhile, Rachel and Ben combed the town. Locals offered tips, some genuine, others hopeful guesses. A few remembered seeing the dog days earlier, limping near the school or curled beneath a tractor in a field. The trail was never warm for long. Cooper moved constantly, evading capture like a ghost. But the evidence was there. Paw prints, tufts of golden fur snagged on barbed wire, a bowl of food licked clean. Cooper was always one step ahead. What kept him going wasn't reason. It wasn't knowledge of roads or geography. It was something unexplainable, a tether that pulled him toward the people who had been his whole world. Something in his soul told him they weren't gone, that they were looking for him too, that he wasn't alone. Nights were brutal. Cold snapped at his joints, and his belly stayed empty more often than full. But when Cooper closed his eyes, he dreamed of home. The scent of pancakes in the kitchen, the sound of children's laughter, the weight of his head in Ben's lap. These weren't just memories, they were motivations, and they kept his legs moving, one slow mile at a time. Back in town, the Harris family was growing weary. Each false sighting chipped away at their hope. Ben's injuries flared under the strain of movement. The children, too young to understand the toll of trauma, clung to the idea that each corner might be the one where Cooper would appear. But dusk came and went, and no golden retriever emerged from the shadows. Until a man named Harold, a farmer whose land bordered the farthest edge of the search area, made a call. He had seen the dog earlier that morning, resting under a hay trailer. When he tried to approach, the dog fled toward the tree line. But there was something in his demeanor that stuck with Harold. A quiet urgency, a focus unlike anything he'd seen in a stray. He gave them directions. Rachel and Ben, hearts thundering, followed the narrow gravel road until they reached the edge of a field glowing under the fading sun. The land was quiet. No sound but wind in the tall grass and the chirping of cicadas. Rachel stepped from the car, scanning the horizon, her breath held. Ben followed slowly, leaning on his cane, eyes sweeping the landscape. The children remained silent, hands pressed to the window glass, watching. They didn't see him at first, but Cooper saw them. From the edge of the field, he emerged, hesitant, slow, his body lean and ragged. His gait was uneven, favoring one side, and his fur was darkened with dust. But his eyes, those deep amber eyes, locked onto the figures standing by the road. A sound escaped from Rachel's throat, part gasp, part sob. Ben's knees nearly buckled. Cooper didn't run. He walked. Each step forward was a story of survival, of love that didn't surrender to the wild, of instinct guided by loyalty. He reached the edge of the road, pausing as if unsure the moment was real. And then, at last, he crossed the threshold, closing the distance between heartbreak and home. There would be tears, there would be hugs, soft words spoken through trembling voices. But Cooper didn't need explanations. He didn't need apologies. He had never stopped believing. And now, neither would they. Because somehow, against every odds, Cooper had found them. Or maybe they had all found their way back to each other. But the journey, while over in distance, was just beginning in healing. They brought Cooper home in quiet reverence, as if returning a long-lost piece of their souls. His frame was thin, his fur tangled with burrs and dirt, and his once bright coat now dulled by weeks of exposure. But none of that mattered. He was alive. And he was home. The house, which had felt like a museum of grief, lit up again. The empty dog bed was quickly cleaned and filled with soft blankets. The food bowl, untouched for over a month, was once again filled and emptied in seconds. Rachel knelt beside him with trembling hands, brushing his coat with slow, deliberate strokes, each one peeling back a layer of pain. The children hovered near him, hesitant but overjoyed, careful not to overwhelm. Even Ben, still walking with effort and wrapped in his own healing, sat quietly at Cooper's side. Their breaths falling into rhythm, as if no time had passed at all. Cooper slept for almost 2 days straight. During those hours, the family didn't disturb him. They let him rest in peace he had earned tenfold. Occasionally, he stirred, his legs twitching as if running through a dream, his ears flicking at phantom sounds. Rachel stayed close, watching him breathe, still half expecting him to vanish like a memory too painful to trust. But each time his chest rose and fell, she felt something inside her shift, loosening of sorrow, a reawakening of hope. When he finally woke, he was different, but no less Cooper. Slower, yes, more cautious. But his spirit had not been dulled. He followed the children from room to room, his tail wagging gently. He lay at Ben's feet during long therapy sessions at home. At night, he curled beside Rachel, his eyes always half open, as if still afraid something might take them away again. Recovery was a long, winding road. Ben's injuries left him with nerve damage that affected his gait and stamina. Physical therapy became routine, a mix of frustration and resolve. But Cooper's presence changed the atmosphere. Each small victory, walking from one end of the hall to the other without a break, climbing a step unassisted, was met with Cooper's quiet companionship. He didn't cheer or bark, but his gaze never wavered. As if to say, "You kept going, so will I." Rachel had her own journey. Though her injuries were physical, the emotional trauma weighed heavier. For weeks after the accident, she had moved on autopilot, meals, school pickups, medication schedules, but inside, she had felt like a shell. Losing Cooper, even temporarily, had ripped open something she hadn't been ready to face. How fragile everything was, how quickly a life can tilt from normal to nightmare. But Cooper's return brought more than joy. It brought clarity, a reason to lean into the pain instead of running from it. He had never given up on them, even when the world turned its back. That loyalty became her strength. The children, too, began to shift. Their drawings, once filled with storms and broken cars, slowly gave way to pictures of sunshine and their dog, Golden, and smiling. Nightmares stopped. Laughter returned in small, scattered bursts. They resumed playing in the backyard, always with Cooper watching, always nearby. His quiet protection became their reassurance that the worst was behind them. But Cooper still bore the marks of his journey. He startled at loud sounds. He avoided car rides. He became nervous around strangers, retreating to corners until he could assess their intentions. And he no longer slept deeply. His body remained tense, always on alert. Rachel and Ben noticed these things, but didn't try to force him out of them. They understood. Trauma didn't disappear. It lived in the bones. It echoed in the silence. But with time and love, even echoes could fade. One day, a local journalist reached out. The story of Cooper's journey had spread through the small town and into nearby communities. People were amazed by his perseverance. They called it a miracle, a symbol of unwavering loyalty. Rachel agreed to the interview, but with one condition: it wouldn't just be about Cooper. It would be about family, about healing, about how something broken could still be whole again, just in a different shape. The story aired on the evening news. Footage of Cooper, now groomed and walking steadily beside Ben, played alongside images of the crash site and the long road he had traveled. The anchor called it "The Dog Who Walked Through Fire." Emails and letters followed, messages of gratitude, admiration, and shared pain. People saw themselves in the Harris family, in Cooper, in the long walk back to love. Cooper didn't understand the attention. He didn't care for the camera flashes or the strangers calling his name. All he cared about was being close to his people, the ones he had fought to find, the ones who had never stopped missing him. The seasons changed. Spring bled into summer, and life, though altered, found a new rhythm. There were still doctor's visits, there were still scars, but there was also joy. Birthdays celebrated with extra slices of cake for the dog. Evenings on the porch, the sun setting behind them as Cooper lay at their feet, content. In those quiet moments, the family often reflected on everything they had endured. The accident, the fear, the weeks of uncertainty, and the dog who had crossed miles, broken and bleeding, not for survival, but for reunion. They didn't need words to explain it. Cooper had made a promise, one not spoken, but lived. And through that promise, they had all found a path home. Time has a way of softening the sharp edges of trauma. Months passed, and the pain of the crash no longer sat in the front seat of every moment. Instead, it settled quietly in the background, a scar rather than an open wound. The Harris family had not forgotten, but they had healed, slowly, intentionally, together. Cooper's transformation mirrored their own. The golden retriever who had once limped through forests and back roads now moved with quiet confidence. He would never regain the same energy he had before the accident. His hips still stiffened on colder mornings, and he tired more easily. But the fire in his spirit never dimmed. If anything, it burned more steadily now. Not with the frantic energy of youth, but with the grounded resolve of a survivor. And while Cooper might not have known it, he had become more than just a pet. To the Harris family, he was a symbol, a living, breathing testament to what endurance, love, and unwavering loyalty could achieve. Every morning when they found him curled at the foot of the children's beds, every evening when he followed Ben around the yard during his walks, they saw not just a dog, but a guardian, a thread that had held their family together when everything else threatened to unravel. They began to mark anniversaries, not of the crash, but of Cooper's return. The first year, they held a small gathering in their backyard, just family, a few close friends, and a homemade cake with a bone-shaped decoration on top. Cooper wore a soft blue bandana. The children's handwriting scrawled across it in permanent marker, "Our hero." Pictures were taken, memories shared, but what lingered most was the sense of reverence, the quiet acknowledgement of what they had come through. Rachel started keeping a journal again. It had once been her habit before the crash, a place to store thoughts, worries, and fleeting joys. After the accident, she had stopped, unsure how to shape words around such chaos. But one evening, as Cooper rested with his head in her lap, she picked up her pen again. The first entry was simple. He never gave up on us, and because of that, we didn't give up on each other. Ben made progress too. Physical therapy remained a part of his routine, and while he still walked with a slight limp, he no longer viewed it as a limitation. Instead, it reminded him of what he had survived. He often said that watching Cooper navigate the world, imperfect yet unbroken, taught him more about resilience than any doctor ever could. Even the children, young as they were, carried the lessons of that year in small, meaningful ways. They became more compassionate, more curious, more aware of the fragile beauty of life. Their drawings evolved, no longer stormy or fearful, but filled with light and movement. Always, Cooper appeared in the center, larger than life, his tail wagging, his eyes kind. But life, as always, kept moving forward. Years passed, seasons came and went, and Cooper grew older. His muzzle turned gray, his steps slower. He slept more, barked less. But his presence never faded. If anything, his quiet companionship became even more precious. Every routine, feeding time, morning walks, lazy afternoons on the porch, took on deeper meaning, because the family knew, with increasing clarity, that time was no longer on their side. And then, one winter morning, Cooper didn't wake. He had passed some time during the night, peacefully curled in his favorite spot beneath the living room window. The family found him as the sun began to rise, casting long beams of light across the hardwood floor. Rachel wept first, holding his still warm body close. The children cried without shame. Ben sat beside them all, hand resting gently on Cooper's side, as if trying to absorb whatever strength still lingered. They buried him in the backyard, beneath the tree where he had so often lay watching the children play. The stone they placed above the grave was simple. Cooper. He found his way back to us, and kept us together when we needed him most. The loss was deep. It echoed through the house in subtle ways. The absence of footfalls, the empty food bowl, the silent spaces where he once waited patiently for someone to come home. But the grief, though heavy, was filled with love, because they had been given a gift most never receive. A story of impossible survival, of a bond that defied logic and distance, of a dog who reminded them what it meant to fight for the people you love, even when everything seems lost. And so, they carried him with them. In the way Rachel returned to writing, in the way Ben spoke to others at physical therapy, encouraging them to keep going, in the way the children looked at the world, with open hearts, ready to love, ready to trust. Cooper's journey had ended, but his impact would never fade. Because sometimes, the most powerful stories aren't written in words or told on screens. Sometimes, they are lived. In every step taken toward hope, in every breath drawn through pain, in every moment a heart chooses not to give up. And for the Harris family, there would never be a doubt. Their dog hadn't just survived a crash. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.